In today's episode of Footwork Focus, we're going to be going over turn drops. A turn drop is simply the act of lifting both feet off the ground and landing into an explosive turn position with your inside foot forward, outside foot back for the purpose of accelerating into a drive. Much like a regular drop, when you perform a turn drop, you're focusing on lowering your hips and shoulders slightly in order to get into a more explosive stance, and you're really looking to change speeds out of this move and accelerate. The main difference comes from the fact that our body is turned and our shoulders are in a closed position relative to the rim. Similar to a regular drop, you can land into your turn drop back foot, front foot, or both feet simultaneously. Landing back foot then front foot is definitely the more common variation because it gives you more fluid acceleration. However, you will see players at times land both feet simultaneously. Now we're going to start taking a look at different ways to access our turn drop footwork. So the first one of this is going to be our skip into a turn drop, which is simply going to be skipping off our inside foot and then lifting both feet and landing into our turn drop footwork. Performing a skip or an inverted skip into a turn drop is probably the most common way in basketball to access a turn drop footwork. Out of a lateral drive across the court, a turn drop can give you several advantages, including the ability to probe the paint and protect the ball behind you with your body, the ability to change directions and cut back to the rim while driving laterally, and of course the ever-present fact that getting into your turn drop stance makes you more explosive, so now you can really change speeds and accelerate to the rim. Another sort of added bonus advantage to turn drops is the fact that a turn drop position is the same position out of which you would perform a retreat dribble, so now the defender is guessing whether you're going to retreat or use that position to accelerate to the rim. Our second way that you can access turn drops is going to be using an inverted skip. So an inverted skip is simply the act of skipping off the outside foot. As you can see in each of these clips, we are initiating our turn drop by lifting off of that outside or ball side foot and then landing into the turn drop in order to accelerate back to the rim. Having gone through a lot of NBA footage looking for turn drops, I've actually found that it's a lot more common to do an inverted skip off the outside foot than it is to do a regular skip off the inside foot when accessing your turn drop. And as you can see from these various clips, there's a lot of different NBA players that utilize this footwork. It's very, very common in today's game. And despite the fact that it is very common in today's game, you don't really see a lot of trainers teaching this. One of the reasons for this is prior to me making this video, there was no footwork terminology for what I have denoted as a turn drop. The benefit to creating new footwork terminology is that now you can teach it, you can learn it, and you can identify it when watching the game. So continuing with our methods for accessing turn drops, our next one is going to be an inverted hip swivel to turn drop. As you can see in this clip, we're going to perform a inverted hip swivel by turning our body and turning our outside foot, and then lift both of our feet and land into our turn drop, pushing off to accelerate. The act of lifting and landing into a turn drop after your hip swivel is going to give you a little bit of added acceleration from the fact that you're able to lift and quickly pop your feet back into the floor so that you can accelerate and push off. Next up is our delayed turn drop. So this is simply going to be the act of performing a turn drop when you're already in that turn stance. Since we're already in that turn stance, all we have to do is lift our feet and then pop them aggressively back into the floor in order to accelerate into our drive. And that would be your delayed turn drop. As you can see in these clips, we're working on a really common way to use a delayed turn drop. So that would be driving, coming into a inverted drag stop, and then retreating with a retreat dribble, and then from that, re-accessing our delayed turn drop by popping our feet back into the floor. Delayed turn drops are really great and really common within the game because they allow you to accelerate and attack out of that closed turned position. So therefore you get all the protective ball security benefits of being in that turn close stance while also maintaining the ability to be an explosive driving threat. We can also access a turn drop by performing a reverse partial pivot. This simply means using a reverse pivot to turn our body relative to the rim into that closed stance and then interrupting that pivot, thus making it a partial pivot, and lifting our feet and replacing them back into the ground into our turn drop. This method of accessing turn drops is a little bit less common, but here's one clip I could find of Spencer Dinwiddie doing a reverse pivot into a turn drop. Our next method is going to be a bound into a turn drop. This one's definitely probably my favorite because of the shiftiness it brings. You can do this out of a cross, out of a through the legs bound, or out of a behind the back bound. All of these landing in your turn drop. So to do this successfully, you're going to want to pull off your outside foot and then turn your body in the air as you're performing that bound. So a bound is simply jumping to the side, and you're going to land in that turn drop stance, becoming explosive while also protecting the basketball. Bounding into a turn drop is an incredibly effective way to get by the defense. This is firstly because our bound footwork allows you to separate laterally from the defense while changing speeds, slowing down in the air. Next, instead of landing into a more traditional wide drop footwork, you're going to land into a turn drop with your body turned. This makes it look like you're more likely to retreat, and therefore the defender usually relaxes, giving you essentially a clear lane to the rim. A nice shiftier variation on the bound to turn drop is an inverted bound to an inverted turn drop cross. This means on our bound we're jumping to the inside away from the ball instead of to the outside with the ball. This is called an inverted bound. And we land into our inverted turn drop, which is simply a turn drop where our outside foot is forward and our inside foot is back. As soon as we land in our inverted turn drop, we're going to cross the ball back to our backhand. Thus, altogether, we call it an inverted turn drop cross. This variation of the move brings a lot of unpredictability due to misdirections. Our hand exchange into an inverted bound sends the basketball going one way as we jump the other way. And then as we land into our inverted drop, we cross the ball backwards despite driving forwards. All in all, between your footwork and the ball handling manipulation, you end up with a lot of different misdirections, and that's going to be real hard for a defender to keep up with. So there you have it. That's your turn drop footwork and 8 different ways to access it. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, keep working on your game.